Amen.
Amen.
Amen. I don't know. I didn't hear what you said.
He said, "You're a shlita,
I thought my sleep.
and you can lift up a big Torah."
Let me start learning sponsors, gentlemen.
Think whatever you want.
Okay. Friends of Nina Monesta Nechama Asna Bad Yitzchak Aaron. Many friends of Stephen Vigdal, Ezech Nishmat Simcha Melech Ben Meir Leib Halevi. Friends of Marcy Kurtz in memory of her great niece Leah Bracha. Isaac and Evelyn Blachor in memory of his sister Chaya Rachel Bas Isser. A month of learning by Gary and Marsha Schrager in memory of his parents Freda Bat Hendel and David Ben Yosef. Marsha Federbush in memory of her husband Uriel Pinchas Ben Rav Shimon. Andrea and David Dolney in memory of her father Tzvi Herschel Hillel Ben Abraham. Dov Bodlander in memory of his mother Beled Vasha Bas Rav Dov Berish. His father Tzvi Ben Yaakov Yitzchak. His mother-in-law Alta Atla.
Atla.
Okay. Chaya Bat Avram Yosef. And his father-in-law Yehuda Tzvi Ben David Nachum. A week of learning by Vicky Rubinovich Fish and Larry Fish. In memory of her father Chaim Zusia Ben Shlomo Ben Sion. And her mother Ita Bat Tzvi and his father Avram David Ben Shlomo Raphael. Donna Goldstein in memory of her father Aryeh Yehuda Ben Moshe Shmuel. Michael and Judith Poretsky in memory of his father Gershon Ben Chaim Tzvi. And today being the 28th of the month, we have, the other day on Friday, we had Gail and Milton Mello, we said, in memory of her father Ayele Ben Tzvi Hirsch. And today being the 28th, we have a day of learning by Cheryl and Mike Tuckman, in memory of her father Naphtali Ben Moshe. I am pleased to say that we continue with Peret Semech Ben Yaakov Yitzchak. That the young man Moshe Reuven Ben Simra Tebela has been sent home from the hospital and is doing better, but they ask that we continue to include the name, and we'll also include as Sid's was a great-granddaughter, Adina Naomi Bas Rina Esther for Rishua Shlema, and everyone else we mentioned. May the Shemas have an aliyah, crank Rafia Velti Yeshua Shem Matzliah, and the Chol B'nai Israel good Geben Shtia.
Amen.
Okay. All right. We had some interesting questions asked yesterday at the, okay.
Did you have interesting answers?
No.
Interesting questions deserve interesting answers.
They do, but sometimes shtika kehoda damya. Okay.
We had that in the Gemara.
I know. Okay.
You could have answered, but you chose not to.
Right. Okay. All right.
None.
Okay. I'm starting us back actually on Nun Beis, Amud Beis, the very bottom, towards the very bottom. Okay. All right. That's where I sort of left off yesterday.
But we're doing the bottom of the previous.
Okay. All right. So we had there Muta Dinar b'Mukom Dekami Ikra Nachla D'Oraita. You're going to actually uproot. The rabbi is going to uproot something from the Torah. Lo Tekinu Rabbanan. Okay. They did not therefore they did not include the Banim Dichrin phrase for section in the Ksuba. Okay, and that's where I stopped yesterday, basically. Okay, so we're going to start off today with the story about Rav Papa making a chasana for his son. Okay, and then we're going to go into that whole story and what the ramifications from that as well. Okay, all right. I want to just indicate very quickly, there are two other personalities mentioned in this story that we need to be aware of. Okay, one is Abba Surah, who actually was Rabbi Papa's father-in-law, Okay, and so he was married. So the son of Rav Papa was actually going to be marrying now his father's sister-in-law.
His father's sister?
Yeah,
Rav Papa's son.
Rav
is
Papa's son,
marrying
a
Abba's
daughter
or granddaughter
a daughter of Abba
of
Surah.
Right.
So it's Rav Papa's sister-in-law. Okay,
Yeah.
right? Okay,
So the kid is marrying his aunt,
no,
his cousin.
no.
What
This,
about-
okay, that's the question that Art Scroll raises in a note, okay? And explains in the note that it's not actually, otherwise he would have been
it's an
prohibited.
unrelated girl
It would have been
from another wife.
Okay, it would have been prohibited to marry her, were she her aunt. Okay, sometimes I do look at Art Scroll, okay? And in this case,
Must have been-
okay,
Oh, it's Rav Papa's previous.
so it's Rav Papa, this is from it could be from a second marriage, this son. Okay, and that's why he's not marrying his aunt.
Yeah, it still says a previous, because otherwise it wouldn't be older.
Okay, well, that's a whole different issue. Okay, we're not talking age here. Okay, but Rav Papa, we're going to see is going to go to the home of Abba Surah to work out the arrangements for the ksuba. Okay. Okay, all right. The other personality we need to be aware of in this particular story, as we're going to jump in a moment, okay, right, is none other than, okay, Yehuda bar Merimar. Okay, why is he important? He was a sage himself, but not just that, he was also related to the Exilon.
He was also obviously the Myra Dasra of that.
Not necessarily.
Because he was afraid that his presence.
That we're going to get to that, but that doesn't make him the Maradasra.
All right.
Okay, but it was from what shot I had, it was more because he was connected to the Exilarch's family.
That would do.
Okay, so we need to be aware of the fact that personalities are involved here because of the situation that's going to be described in the Gemara. Okay, so that's where we're going to. Where's my? Okay, so that's where we're picking up. All right, and I know we're only 25 minutes late, but we'll go through what we can. Okay, Rav Papa Iasik Leila Bere Be Abasura. Rav Papa was coming to work out the arrangements for the wedding. In other words, to get what the text is going to be in the inclusion of the dowry for the ksuba. That's the important point here. Okay, at the house of Abasura. Azir lemichtav la ketubasa. And that's what the Gemara is telling us here, that he's come to work out the arrangements of the ksuba, namely the dowry. Okay, Shema Yehuda bar Merimar, and Yehuda bar Merimar heard that Rav Papa was coming. Okay, so he was in town, he's coming to see him. So what do? Nafak. Okay, he goes out to greet him. Ata itchazeh, he went out to see itchazele, went out to see him. Kimatu lepitcha, but when they came to the entrance of Abasura's house, what happened? Havakam patar mine. He saw, Rav Papa saw that Yehuda ben Bar Merimar was hastening, was backing away. Okay, he wanted to take leave from entering. Okay, Amarle, he said to him, Rav Papa, Ni'ol mar bahadai. He says, why don't you come on in with me? Okay, now we go to today's daf, Nun Gimel, Amud Aleph. Chazia delo haya nechale. He saw that it was not comfortable for him to enter. Amarle, and he said to him, my datech, what's your reasoning? What are you thinking? Mishum da Amarle, is it because there was a lesson that was taught? Mishum da Amarle Shmuel Rav Yehuda. Was it based on the fact that Shmuel once said to Rav Yehuda, Shinana, smart guy, so to speak, Lo tahave ba'avure ach santa. Okay, you do not want to be involved in the transfer of inheritance. Afilu mibra baisha lebratava, even from a bad son to a good son, delo yadia, mai zara nafik mine, because we don't know what progeny will come from him. Okay? V'kol shekain mibra lebarta, and all the more so from a son to a daughter. Okay? Hi Nami, here too. Takanta de Rabbananhi. There's a takana of the rabbis. The Amar Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. In the name of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Amarle, he said to him. Okay? All right, what are we saying here? Hani mili midate. Okay, that this is based on, okay, if the question is it based on his view? La'asuye nami. But what about the question of coercion here? Okay, Amarle. So Rav Papa is now responding back to Yehuda. Okay, Bar Mema. Atu mika amina lach the old vasiya. Have I said to you that I want you to come in and coerce him? In other words, put pressure on Abba Surah to write a greater dowry in this case? Is that the question? To coerce him into writing a larger dowry? What happened? So Yehuda ben Maramar does walk in with Rav Papa. Okay? Ul velota asiya kamina. Okay? He said, come in and don't put any pressure on him, is what I'm saying. Okay? Amarle, he said to him the following, Ma'alai didi hainu asiya. He says, my simple coming into the room will be as if I'm coercing him. Okay, so what happens? Achfaye, that Rav Papa sort of pushed him, forced him to come in, v'ol, and he entered. Ishtik, but Yehuda bar Memima was silent, v'yativ, and he sat down. Now, Abba Surah, seeing that he came in and sat down but was not saying anything, this is what's happening. Savar, hahu mirtach ratach. He was under the impression, Abba Surah, that Yehuda bar Merimar was angry or upset with him. Okay? And therefore, what did he do? Katve lecho mai dahavale. Okay, he wrote the dowry to include all of his property that he had. Okay? What happens then? Lesof, right? Amarle, afterwards. Okay, he said to him, Hashta, nami lo mishtayma. Here now the master is not saying anything. Okay. Okay, he still didn't say anything when he wrote all his property then. Okay? Okay. In other words, we assume that there was some conversation going on that's not recorded here in the Gemara. Okay? Chai Dema.
He was not involved.
Okay.
He sat quiet.
He sat right. Well, if the conversation is between Abba Surah and Rav Papa, perhaps.
Right.
Okay? So what happens? Chai Demar, by the life of the master, Lo Shaviki Midi Lenafshe. I didn't leave anything for myself. In other words, I totally gave everything over for the dowry, and you're still silent. Does that imply that I did something wrong? That you're not happy? I didn't give enough? That's the implication. Okay? Amarle, he said to him, Iminai Didi. Okay? Afilu hai nami de katavt lo nechali. Okay? Basically, what he's saying to him is if I want to say
If you followed my advice.
okay, if I had said anything, or if you had asked me, okay, and what was about my opinion, okay, afilu hai nami de katavla, even the what you have written
The original
was not
amendment
necessarily
was too much.
something that was comfortable for me.
So
Okay,
that was too much.
all right, amarle. So in other words, what had happened was apparently Abba Surah wrote one amount. When he saw that Yehuda bar Merima was still silent, he simply then added more to that. We need to understand that was the situation. Okay? So what happens? Amarle, okay, so now Abba Surah is saying, Shavye nafshech hadrana. You want me, by saying that, now you want me to turn myself into a retractor? In other words, you want me to tear it up and go back On my word, that's what you're expecting me to do? Lo ka'amina. He says, that's not what I intended and what I said. Okay, so that's the scenario there.
But he was allowed to retract because
No,
he was allowed to, but it wasn't a good thing to go back on his word, but he was allowed to, because the Nision had not taken place yet.
A Kenyan was not.
Kenyan was done. Okay,
You're correct, but even if you may technically retract,
I agree.
you're not supposed to.
I do agree.
A man is supposed to keep his word, okay, especially in this situation. Okay, let's go on. Ba'imine Rav Yimar Saba me Rav Nachman. So Rav Yima the older or the elder asked a question of Rav Nachman. Okay, and this is going to lead us into somewhat different direction. Okay, but we need to keep in mind, by the way, that the Banin Dichrin text, okay, is still an underlying theme in terms of our Gemara here.
and just to correct something you said earlier, it applies even if a very minimal amount is left to divvy up by all the sons
Okay.
after they.
Well, we'll get to that. We'll get to that point.
Well, that was already.
Okay, but
the
remember
dinar.
the point here also is we saw certain things were included as Tanai based in. Okay? And so even if something sometimes is not written in the text of the
Applies
ketubah, it's still applicable in the situation because of Tanai based in. Okay?
In other words, Benin Dichrin is nothing is written in the Ksubah.
No,
No, the words are
ideally
there.
it was
It is
written,
in the Ksubah.
but if it wasn't there for some reason,
They may apply.
nevertheless, it was still applicable because it was a Tanai based in. Okay?
And
But
It
I'm
makes no
saying that
difference.
this was, which was the topic we were discussing for some amudim here, some dapim, still is an underlying theme that we're going to have to get back to.
And then just to comment on the not obligated to feed the daughters, all the consumers also have a clause. I'll support the daughters we create together and give them dowries
Well,
so
we'll
they
get
can
to that.
marry.
We'll
That's
get to
also.
that. Okay, we'll get to that. Okay, now here's the question that he asks. Machrak tu batala ba'ala. The woman sells her ksuba. Okay, in this case, we're not talking about necessarily just the 200 or the 100 that's written in the text. We're talking about something significant. Okay, basically, we're almost talking about the dowry
That
as
was
well.
significant.
Okay, so what happens? All right, yesh lak tu bat binyan dichrin. In that case, we still have the phrase, the requirement of ktubas binyan dichrin included. Oh, ein la ktubas binyan dichrin. Or don't we have, his question is, this phrase and this requirement to be carried out?
Do
Right?
their rights survive that
Okay.
sale?
All right, so Amarle Rava. So Rava says as follows now. Okay, V'tebaye lach mochelet. What you should have asked is not the issue of selling, but you should have asked the issue of waiving or forgoing her right to the ketubah. Okay, Amarle, and so he says to him, Hashta mocheret kimebayeli. Now that you've asked about selling, okay, the issue of her ketubah, the afal gav the ikala memar zuze ansuha, that even though it's possible to say that she, because of a need for money, she was forced to do so. Okay, the amina, because I'm saying keman de kamachula mea ochle beuchla, because maybe the demand, the need for money was so strong that it was if she felt that she was being flogged with something that was like a piece of a metal weight or a hammer or something like that. Mochelet mebaye. Why then do I have to even raise the question of simply waiving the ketubah?
When the man, when he marries her, isn't he responsible for her financial obligations? He's responsible to keep her up. He has to provide for her.
That's true.
So why
That's
would she have such financial problems?
Oh, good question.
He
And
could
she
be
can't
over.
live
Zev's
with her
question
husband.
was, why should she have any financial pressures? Okay, if he has the responsibility to do certain things for her.
Does he have the responsibility to support her children from her previous marriage?
Well, that's a different issue.
Oh, that could be
Okay,
some of her.
Bob,
Yeah, and she's selling it to the husband. Now, she can't live with the husband without a ksuba. So
Yeah, but
if she
it's still
gets
there.
rid of it, it's
Okay.
tantamount.
so there's a note in Art Scroll that also deals with that. I don't remember what the number is. I didn't write it down because it was Shabbos, right? But the point is, there's a note in Art Scroll on that page that tells us that your question is what it's referring to. Without a ksuba,
13, I think it's
53A111.
okay? Therefore, that in that point, okay, he shouldn't be living with her, or he's living with her illegally. Okay,
Then they have to have separate beds.
right? Minimally. Okay, so what happens? Amar Rava, says Rava, pshitali. It's obvious to me. Mocheret ktubata la'achirim. Okay, in a situation where she sells her ksuba to others. Okay, yesh la ksubat benin dichrin. There we still maintain the fact that there is this text of binyan dichrin is written into the ksuba.
No, that the children retain.
They have
right.
that right, if you want to put it that way. I prefer to see it as that
Well,
it's
in
still
the ksuba, but
maintained.
they don't-
Okay, it's still
The
maintained.
shaila is if she sells the kasuba,
You're
does that go
just
with it?
phrasing it differently than I am. That's all. It's the same concept. Okay, they keep the right, whether it's written in the document or not. But my implication, my shot was that it was still included. Okay,
Well, they,
which means they keep the right. They have that right.
Okay.
That's all. Okay, my tama, maybe zuze ansuha. Again, the situation is that she needed to do so because she needed the money. She was forced. Mochelet ktubata leba'ala. The selling of her ktuba to her husband, ein la ktubat banim dachrin. There we may say that there is no continuation of the right or the inclusion there.
because she got the money already.
Okay, what happens? My tama, what's the reasoning? Achuli achilta. Because basically she has forgiven it. She's given it up. Okay, by Rava. And so Rava asks the question, Mocheret ketubata ba'ala. When we say that she sells her ketuba to the husband, in other words, she's giving that up, right? All right. Kim mocheret la'achirim dami. Do we compare it to when it's sold to a third party, to others? Oh, do we say, all right, kim mochelet leba'ala dami? Or is it like she's waived and forgoes it to her husband? Is that's what it compared to? Okay, so now what happens, says the Gemara? Batar debaya hadar pashta. After Rava asked the question, he then gives his answer himself, namely, mocheret ketubata leba'ala, when she sells the ketubah to her husband. Ke mocheret la'achirim dam. He says, Rava, that it's like selling it to a third party. However, what happens? Meitiv Rav Idi bar Avid. He comes and he challenges Rava's answer. Meta, let's say the woman dies. Ein Yoshin shel zeh, that the heirs of the first husband, the Ein Yoshin shel zeh, or the heirs of the second husband, Yoshin ketubata. Neither of them, okay, right, receive that, inherit that ksuba money. Vahavinen ba, and we've discussed this, he says, namely, ktubata mayavidata. When we said the question of regarding the ksuba, right, what do we do with it? What's its status? Va'amar Rav Papa, and Rav Papa says then, ktubat banin dichrin. Okay, aren't we therefore talking specifically about the example of a Ketubah Binan Dichrin, okay, where they still have it either included in the text or they still have the rights to that, right? V'amai, and why do we say that? Hachanami, lema yetzer ansa. Maybe here we're going to say that the great desire she had to marry this fellow, okay, right? And elsewhere, it may be Art Scroll, maybe Koran, I don't remember exactly which, but it's to desire to marry a second husband on the testimony of a single witness, okay, without doing a thorough investigation. Okay? That's what the Gemara is suggesting here, and I believe that's actually based on Rashi. All right? Hatam kansahu the kansuha rabbanan. There, in that kind of a situation, the rabbis made a penalty for her
That she doesn't get
because
the
she,
first Kisuba
all right,
either.
because she didn't do the adequate
Due
Due
diligence.
diligence, right? But what happens? So the Gemara goes on. Yativ Rabin Bar Chanina Kame de Rav Chisda. So now we have another situation, says the Gemara, where Ravin Bar Chanina was sitting before Rav Chisda. V'yativ Ka'amar Mashmei de Rabbi Elazar. And he was saying a lesson in the name of Rabbi Elazar. The following. Mochelet ketubata leba'ala. When she waives or forgoes the ketubah to her husband, ein la mizonot. Then she no longer has, Zev,
The right to be.
right, the right to be sustained. Okay, that's your question. That's your answer, right? Okay, Amarle. Okay, she gave up her rights, exactly. Amarle, and he says to her, says to him, I'm sorry, I love the kamart li mishmei the gavra rabba, were it not by the fact that you cited this in the name of Rabbi Elazar, okay, who was a gavra rabba, okay, he was a Tana after all, right? Hava amina lach, I would have said to you, I would have come back with an answer following Meshiv ra'ah tachat tova. When you do a bad deed in place of a good one, lo timush ra'ah mi beito, then evil won't depart from your house, kind of situation. Okay? So what happens? The Gemara picks up and continues. Yativ Rav Nachman ve'ula va'abimi bar Rav Papi. The three of them were sitting. V'yativ Rav Chia bar Ami gabayhu. And they were joined along by another sage, Rav Chia bar Ami. Right? Ata ahu gavra. Along came a particular gentleman, okay, a young man, I assume, and he comes and tells them the shachiva arusato, that his betrothed woman, who is almost like a wife status, right? Remember that? Almost like the status of a wife, has died. And he asks the question, Amrele. And he said to him, in other words, do I have to bury her? What's my obligation in this situation? Do I have the responsibility to bury her? Was his shaila. Notice the Gemara doesn't tell us that, but we have to get it from the text. Okay? Amrele, they said to him, Zil kavar, either go and bury her, or have la ktubata, or give to her heirs her ksuba. Okay? That's what the Gemara is telling. Tell him. That's what he tells him.
Whichever is cheaper.
Okay? Amar laho, and he says to them, Rav Chia answers them, Tanina, we learned this. Okay? Namely, Ishto Arusa. Okay, when this woman, okay, when this woman is in the status of being his Arusa, okay, all right, Lo Onain, one does not act as, and she dies, of course, in a situation. Lo Onain, he does not act as an Onain. In other words, the status of Onain doesn't apply to him. right? Velo metamela, and if he's a kohen or a general person, he doesn't become tame. V'chein, he, and likewise as regards she, lo onenet velo mitam'ah lo. Neither does she become an onenet were he to die or to become tmeah in that situation.
Who knows? Well, how can you say he has to bury her when
Okay,
we already
so
learned he
this is the
doesn't?
question of then this implies, why did he give him only the issue of bury or give her ksuba or divorce her and ksuba? Okay,
Bury or pay.
okay,
Makes sense.
right. So the Gemara continues. Meta no yasha. Okay, also when she dies, he doesn't inherit her. Mate who? Okay, if he was the one to die, Gova Ktubata. Okay, she acquires her ksuba. Ta'ama, the reasoning, the mate who? Why? Because he died. All right? Ha, meta he. But here, when we say she died, ain la ksubata, ain la ksuba. There is no ksuba for her. My Tama, what's the reasoning? Amar Rav Oshaya, says Rav Oshaya, she'ein ani korei ba, that I don't read, in other words, I don't include and understand the requirement of what was written either in the document of the ksuba itself or as part of the t'nai, namely, l'kasher tinsani la'acher titli masha katuvli, that when you marry another person, that's when I must give you what is written on your behalf, namely the ksuba. She doesn't receive her ksuba till she gets remarried, and a dead woman doesn't usually get remarried, right?
Strange people out there.
Okay, what happens? Ki ata Ravin, and now the Gemara goes on and tells us, all right, when Ravin came, remember he's commuting back and forth, and he brings the lessons from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel. Keep that in mind because of the following. Amar Reish Lakish, he cites Reish Lakish's statement here. Arusa Shemeta, a woman that is in the status of an Arusa and she dies. Ein Laktuba, there is no Ketuba for her. Amar Laho Abai, and Abai responds, Zilu Amre Le, go and tell Ravin the following, right? What do you tell him? Next Amud, as we continue, right? Shakila tibutach shadya achizari. He says, take, okay, I might say, go and, okay, I remove your good lesson and I throw it into the thorns. Okay.
We didn't need you to bring that
All right.
information.
All right. In other words, basically, we learned it already. All right. Kfar tirgama Rav Oshaya l'shma'ate bebavel. Namely, that Rav Oshaya has already interpreted this particular traditional teaching, okay, for us here in Babylonia. Okay. We get to a new phrase from our Mishnah. Banan nokvan diyahavin lichi minai v'chule. Okay, here we were talking about female progeny, okay, that the man says to her that I'll have with you. So Rav taught as follows, implication being up to what age are we saying that there is an obligation for these girls to be sustained, right? Okay, Rav taught as follows, ad de tilkachan legovrain, until they are taken by men to be wives, okay? Velevitani, and Levi taught, ad de tibagrun, until they become adult women, okay? Okay, at least they to become bogeres, well, parallel to adult women, more than 12 and a half years old, okay? The Rav, afalgav de bagar, for Rav, that means despite the fact that they've reached the age of more than 12 and a half. The Levi,
married,
but they may not be married yet. They may not be married yet. The Levi, Afal gav de insavi. And Levi says, what about the fact, okay, that even though they're not married, so to speak, Ella rather, okay,
No, even if they are married,
okay,
but they're not yet a
but that's
bogeres.
not a Bulgarian, right? Bagar, right? Bagar velo insav. Does that rather mean that they're reached the age of majority, but they're not married? Insav velo bager, or that they're married, but they haven't reached the age of majority? Okay. The kuli alma lo plige. No, everybody is not there. Everybody doesn't disagree here. Okay, right? That, in other words, that they're not entitled to sustenance. Ki pligi, where are they disagreeing? Ba'arusa velo bagar. In a situation where the girl is in the status of an arusa, but she has not reached the age of majority, 12 and a half. V'chein tani Levi b'matnitai. And Levi also teaches this in his Braita. Ad de tibagran, okay, v'yamte zmanehon de unsaban, until they've reached bagrus, all right, adulthood, or 12 and a half plus, okay, and then they come to the time of their marriage. Tarte, are we saying that he requires both of these requirements, both of these characteristics? Ella rather, e tibagran o yamtes manehu. All right, it nasba. Either when they become 12 and a half plus, in other words, reach bagrus, or that they reach the time of their marriage.
Whichever comes
Okay,
first.
so kitanai, but then that seems to be similar to a machloket tanaim. Ad matai habat nizonit. There the question asks, up to what time or what point is a daughter to be sustained? Ad race. And in that machloket tanaim, we say they say it's up to the time she becomes a arusa. Okay, Mishum Rabbi Elazar Amru. And they said in the name of Rabbi Elazar, Ad Shetibager, until she becomes Bagrus, right? 12 plus, 12 and a half plus. What happened though? Tani Rav Yosef. Says Rav Yosef, Adahavian, until they actually become married. Okay?
Well, it just simply becomes.
Yeah, but it means becomes married. Okay, so now there comes a question. Ibailaho. Okay, when you say that she becomes, do we really mean becomes married? Maybe we mean becomes betrothed, erusin, or do we mean actually becomes married? That's the question. Teku. We do not have a definite answer there. Okay, we go on now. Amar le Rav Chisda Rav Yosef. He says as follows. Mi shamialach mine, the Rav Yehuda. Okay. Have you heard, okay, or learned regarding this issue? Okay. From Rav Yehuda. Arusa yesh la mizonot, or ein la mizonot. Okay. Are we talking here that the Arusa girl, does she receive sustenance or doesn't she receive sustenance? And this is a question, the shot I had, does she receive it from the sustenance from brothers? Okay, if they are the Yorshim, if they're the Yorshim, okay?
From the father's estate.
Right, from the estate. Amarle, and he said to him, Mashma lo shamili, an actual lesson I haven't learned. Ela misvara, but from logic, litla, she does not receive it. Kevan de irsa, why? Because once she is in the status of an arusa, we'll put it that way, lo necha le de tazel. It's not comfortable for her, let's say, fiance, to see her humiliated and having to receive some inheritance money from this,
So he'll
in this
do it.
situation.
Going
So,
snoring.
right, or going, or begging, that was another, that was a different shot I had, all right? So in other words, it's just humiliate, he doesn't want her in that status to go
He will
humiliate.
be
So he will
embarrassed if he's,
carry,
right,
he
begging.
will cover her mizon, he will cover her sustenance. That's the point. Okay, Amarle, he said to him, Imashma lo shamiela. If you didn't actually hear a particular lesson that gave an answer, misvara idle. It's possible that from logic we might answer that she does receive sustenance from the brothers through the father's estate, namely, kevan delo kim la begova. Okay, since we're saying here that there is nothing coming, so to speak, from the outside, lo shade zuze b'chdei. Okay, that in this case, a person doesn't simply throw his money away.
The
right?
husband,
Right, the
be,
potential
he's
husband,
not gonna pay
he's
for
just
her,
pay for her.
but she could change her mind.
Right,
and
we
that's
don't
it.
know for sure if they're actually going to get married. It's fine that they may be betrothed or engaged or a ruse, but we don't know if the nisuin is going to actually play out, so to
Does
speak.
that depend on which one withdraws? the
Either
or
one,
none?
doesn't
Either
matter.
one, either
Point is, why
side.
should I pay for you? You might not wind up marrying me.
Okay, ve'ika da'amre, and there are those who phrase this discussion in a slightly different manner, namely, amarle
The
mash.
reverse,
Okay,
the
we're going to
play
see it
is,
in a second. Amarle, they said to him, mashmalo shamiele, a lesson actually I haven't heard. Misvara idla. Maybe from logic we say that she does get,
from her brother.
okay, from the right, from what we said, from the sustenance from the through the brothers from the father's estate. Kevan de lo kim la begova, since there's nothing coming and there's no clear clarification of the wedding, lo shade zuze bichdei. He's not going to put out the money for this. Amar le, or he says to him back, imashma lo shamiala. If you actually haven't learned it as a lesson, misvara idle. Maybe from logic, I would say she doesn't get the sustenance through the brothers from the father's estate, right? Kevan da irsalo nechale, because they're betrothed, it's not comfortable for him, the tzitzil, for the future husband, to see her humiliated either by begging or by having to receive and live off the meager inheritance that the brothers are going to give her. Okay, now we go on, all right? We'll try to finish up as quickly as we can. Siman, we have a mnemonic device telling us, first of all, the gavre, namely to hint at which chachamim are referred to in the following statements. Shin, kaf, zayin, resh, pei. They stand, I'm not going to spell it all out, but it's sheshes and this one and that one, and okay, and Rav Papa is the last one. And then the Gemara is also telling us in this siman, ma'ana, v'yabama, shnia, arusa, v'anasa. Also the topics that are discussing: refusal, a yabam, a second degree forbidden relation, arusa, and v'anasa, and rape. Okay, let's go on. Ba'u minei Rav Shesha. So that we saw that there was the shin was the first, so that's Rav Shesha. Okay, so he was asked the following.
And the mem for ma'an.
Okay, what happens? Mam enet. When the girl refuses, right? Yesh la mizonot or ein la mizonot. Okay, does she receive sustenance or
From her
doesn't she
brothers.
receive sustenance? Through the brothers from the father's estate.
Who tried to marry her off,
Well,
but she refused.
Okay, that could be.
Well, has to be. because
Actually,
you
my
can't
note
be
is
ma'an
it's the mother and the brothers.
either, but okay. But
Okay,
the point, the
that's
brothers.
the point. All right, the marriage is arranged by the mother
So it's
and the
only
brothers.
Rabbanan, and she has the right to say
Right.
no.
Okay. Amar laho Rav Shesha, says Rav Shesha, tini tuha. We learned this. Namely, I'm going to compare it to the following. Almana bebeit aviha, a widow that goes back to the house of her father. Ugrusha bebeit aviha, divorcee wants to go back to live in the house of her father. Vishomeret yabam bebeit aviha, or a woman who is waiting for her yabam and living in the meantime back in the house of her father. Yesh la mizonot. Okay, she does receive sustenance. Okay, right? Rabbi Yehuda Omer, says Rabbi Yehuda, Oda beveit aviha, so long as she is living in the household of her father. Now, remember we said that the attempt to marry her off, I'm saying, was from the mother and the brothers. Okay, so there is no father there. Okay, but she's still residing in that residence. Okay, what happens? Yesh la mizonot, right? Eina beveit havia. If she's not living in that, call it family residence, okay? Ein la mizonot. She does not then receive mizonot, okay? From the estate of the father, okay? Rebbe Yehuda, Hainu Tanakama. If that's the case, Rebbe Yehuda is really basically saying the same thing as Tanakama. Elelav. But isn't it not the following? Mam enet ika bainai. That the issue is the fact that she refused the shidduch. All right? The Tana Kama Savar Idla. The Tana Kama says she has. All right? In other words, she gets mazonos. The Rebbe Yehuda Savar Lisla. And Rebbe Yehuda holds she doesn't. Okay. Now we get to the second scenario. By Reish Lakish. Rabbi Reish Lakish asks as follows. Bat Yibama, the daughter of a woman who was the Yibama, okay, married to her brother-in-law. So this is her brother. This is the Yibama's, I'm going to call it, we might call it stepdaughter for the moment. Okay.
No, it's her daughter from another marriage.
Yeah, it's his.
Not her stepdaughter. It's her
No,
natural daughter.
No, I'm saying I didn't say it was her stepdaughter. It's the Yavam's stepdaughter.
Okay.
Okay, right? The Yavam's stepdaughter. In other words, it could have been the daughter from his brother, or it could have been
No,
from.
if it's a daughter from his
His
brother,
he
she's not a
wouldn't be
Yavama.
Yavamer. He
It's
wouldn't
her.
be Yavamer.
She is in the second marriage.
Right.
Her husband has no issue. She has a daughter from a previous
marriage.
So she's both a mommy and a Yavama.
Could be.
That
Okay.
has to be.
All right.
No.
So
But
what
there
happens?
was no other case.
By Reish Lakish. So he asks, Bat Yavama, Yesh la mizonot or Ein la mizonot? Does this daughter, does she get sustained or not?
By the grandfather.
Okay. Okay. Through the estate. Kevanda Amar Ma, as the master said, Ketubata al michse ba'ala harisha. Ordinarily, we say that the dowry, the money, should be coming from the property of the
little
first
husband.
Litla Odilma Kevan de Elit de Litla Mirishon. Do we say that she doesn't? Or do we say that perhaps if there is no first husband, Takinu la Rabbanan Misheni Itla, that she should be receiving it then from the second husband? Okay, right? What happens? Teku. We don't have an answer here. Okay, I just want to point out very quick to go over to the top of the next Amud. All right? By Rabbi Elazar, the third situation. Rabbi Elazar Batch says as follows. Shnia, when the woman is Shnia la erva, okay? Yesh la mizonot or ein la mizonot. Does she receive sustenance or doesn't she receive sustenance? And we're going to see on the top of Nun Dalid a response to that, and that's where we'll pick up tomorrow. Okay? All right, not too
I
bad.
think we should return to this system. Marry them off when you have little girls. You don't have to pay.